All right. Good morning, everybody. What are you working on today? Today, I've been working on optimizing our shed building process a little bit. We've been doing this for many years, but there's always little tweaks and optimizations and things we can test. So we tested a few things yesterday and liked some of them and didn't like some of them. But the weather's cold today, and before I get back to that, I've been looking at the alerting that I built into ArcSQL. Now, admittedly, I built this years ago or a few years ago and never did much with it, but I've got a project or proof of concept that I'm going to be working on am working on a little bit, I guess, because I'm looking at this. And I'm kind of going back through this code and trying to recall what I did. I have a lot of opinions about alerting and how I like to have alerting configured and how I like to do alerting. So we're just going to look at this alert priority table, and I'm going to kind of walk you through some of the things that it does. As I said, I'm walking back through the code, so I'm not entirely sure how it all works. I'm kind of going back through and documenting it and making sure I've got my head wrapped around it, and also highlighting a few changes I want to make. So if we look at this alert priority table, when you install ArcSQL or when you install K2, it's going to install ArcSQL, you're going to get these alert priorities, and these are 1 through 5. So 0 is not to be used because 0 is basically if I'm doing something, you try to open alert and I can't identify a default priority for some reason, or you've basically got everything disabled, I'm going to go with a 0, which means don't do anything. So you don't really want to define a 0 priority level, and this goes to one of the questions about the code. I think you could, and you could say that 0 is critical and treat zeros as critical. I think that might work. I'd have to check. There's probably some spots in the code it doesn't work, but that's a good to do, I guess. I should allow you to define a 0 alert priority level. Maybe you can, and it should do something if you've said to do something. So basically what I need to do is I need to have a 0 record in here that does nothing that isn't a real record. You're not going to see it. So I guess that's what I need to do. So I think I can figure out a way to do that. So we have the priority levels. The lower the number, the higher the level. And then we have these names. And these are just names I define. Now, one thing I think we can do is we can have too many levels. You really want as few as possible. And you really need to determine which ones are going to open a ticket with your ticket management system, whatever is monitoring SLAs, whatever you're using. Managers tend to want, everything to open a ticket. That doesn't work. It dissuades our ability to want to know about things, because if I want to write an alert quickly, easily, low friction, and we want to be able to do this, we want to put our alerts in code. They should, at this point, be in a source code repository. They should be centralized, meaning most of the alerts should be in one location and should be able to be used from environment to environment with minimal configuration. So all those alerts, if it's it should be critical everywhere, even in non-prod environments. We're just going to change how we route critical alerts in non-prod environments. And we're going to give you some handles to do that so you can define these different environments. But there's things like information, low, moderate, high, and critical. Critical would be, for me, would be like something that's really affecting your SLA. And then we have the alert log type, and notice those are the same words. And what happens here in ArcSQL is the alert log actually, entries in the alert log define notifications. So we have the alert management system, and it's going to be monitoring the alert, this condition of the state of the alert. Is it time to send a reminder, etc.? Am I opening? What am I doing? And then I'm going to log an alert. I'm going to log an entry into the alert log, not the alert log, the ArcSQL log that is going to have this type. And then from that end of things, we define what happens with that. So I might say if anything with the row of type high ends up in the ArcSQL log, then I'm going to send an email to some email group or something like that. So this just basically routes things to the ArcSQL log, and then we can define notifications from there. Alerting itself doesn't handle notifications. It kind of hands it off to ArcSQL log, and show you that in another video. But the next thing we have is enabled, and these are why. No, you can also use cron expressions in here, so you can have different priorities enabled at different times. So maybe there's a, let's call it semi-prod environment in which, if we had an outage, I might not actually want to get up at 2 in the morning. If I can sleep till 5 in the morning for that environment, that would be much better. I can actually set a cron expression for that environment that would basically disable critical alerts in this time. And you can do things like that on the notification side too. So there's a lot of, spots that you can configure things. So cron expressions work here, and it's it's always going to try to find the highest level. So if you pass something and it's high and it's disabled, it's going to return moderate, assuming moderate is enabled. So that's how priorities work there. And then when reminders are sent, we're not necessarily going to send critical again to the reminder log, because maybe that does things we don't want it to do, like maybe it sends text. So maybe Hive will send emails. And so what happens for reminders, once the initial alert is opened, it logs a critical log type, and then when the reminder is sent, it's going to send a hi. These could be the same, they can be whatever you want. But it's something you want to be able to tweak, because these two shouldn't necessarily always be the same. And then we have a reminder interval. How often, how many minutes are we going to send reminders? How many reminders are we going to send? And back off interval, which is a multiple. So each time a reminder is set, this is going to be multiplied by 2 in this case. And so that's going to change to 120 minutes for the second reminder. And that can get larger and larger. Now, one to do I'm going to add is a max reminder interval. So, it'll back off, but then it'll, maybe you want to stop it at 8 hours or whatever. And so that will be the max that, it'll always send reminders at 8 hours or something. Now, once you've exhausted reminders, well, I guess actually once you hit the abandoned interval, so 0 is basically disabled, the alert will continue to go and go and go. But if you set an abandoned interval, let's say I say 7 days, I put whatever the minutes is for 7 days in there, it will abandon this alert, and it will again use the critical keyword in this case. So that will probably end up sending some texts, and it will, or maybe you could hit a Slack channel if you're integrated with that, whatever you want, and it'll say that we're abandoning this. We're basically going to ignore this alert until it is reset. And obviously you want to have some monitors. And the project I'm working on, basically a lot of this stuff's going to be visualized. How many alerts do you have open? How many do you have abandoned? How many reminders have been set? All that kind of stuff. Going to have a lot of good metrics, and that's why I've been working on the charting stuff. So, and then we have the close. So the close can be called, I believe, I'm just going off memory here. I haven't looked at the code. The close can be called manually, but you can have an auto close too. And I think maybe these all auto. No, that's what you do. So yeah, you call close. So like in your code, you basically say if this condition, open alert, else close alert. So when you're writing a test, you always can call close alert, and they're idempotent. So if it's closed, nothing happens, and if it's open, nothing happens if it's already open. And that way, as soon as a condition changes, you call close alert. Now, if you want to have some way to close these manually, which the interface eventually will have that, you could just leave that close alert out, and then you'd have to close it manually. But maybe, well, actually, that's another good to do. Maybe I'll add something that says, maybe soft close or something. I'll have to think about that. Maybe like a soft close. Basically, it would say, this ought to be closed. You could close this, but you've got to close it manually. And then there's an auto close interval. So this allows you to basically auto close the alert even if it's open, because it kind of resets this whole cycle. So maybe after 14 days, I want to close this, and if 10 minutes later the check comes along and calls open alert, we go back to a critical alert that's reopened. So those are just some of the handles that you have for defining alert priorities. And then when you get into routing these messages to actual user groups, you have these kinds of things also. You have some of this also. So this makes a really, to me, a very highly configurable environment that can be configured in code in your when you're installing your monitoring into an environment. You can write alerts that always use the same keywords and are same priority levels, and then just modify how those priority levels are handled in different environments. And so if a development environment all of a sudden becomes critical, mission critical, because there's deadlines, there's contracts, whatever have you, you could very easily just change some of the attributes for that environment so that it's basically treated like a critical environment. Very easy to do. So I like this. And as I said, there's some to-dos I'll be working on. And this code is all available in K2 now. Of course, I'm working on it and making lots of changes, but it should work. So anyway, that's what I'm up to until we get warmed up, and then I'm going to go out and build some sheds today. All right. Thanks for listening, watching.